Well, I don't think you'd find anyone with Penrith in their top 8 predictions last year. Could there be a team that emulates that grand final appearance? We've got Liam and Brendan from Sporting News here to go through the 16 sides and rank where they're going to sit at the end of the year. Liam, let's start with you. How do we feel about the Broncos this year? Obviously, Kevin Walters arrives at the helm, but some massive off-season departures.
I think Kevy's a real good signing for the Broncos as head coach. He'll bring that culture back that they've probably been lacking for the last couple of years under Anthony Seibold. They're obviously one of the proudest clubs in the history of the game. Unfortunately for Kevy, he's inheriting quite a poor roster. They've lost some big names for Feeder, Offengowie, Darius Boyd retiring as well, and Matt Gillette at the start of last season they never really recovered from. So unfortunately for Kevy, I think this year will be a real struggle for him. I've got them finishing the bottom 4 once again. But yeah, in the long run, I think the signing of Kevy Walters will be a good one.
I still have questions over Kevin Walters as a week-to-week NRL coach. He was great at Origin where maybe it's a bit more mad management, but in the week-to-week grind, the pressure that goes with coaching the Broncos, and they are struggling. I don't think their roster's that great. They can't go worse than they did last year. I don't see them going that much better. I've got them in 15th.
You happy with that, Liam?
Yeah, I've got them at 15th again.
So the Broncos finishing in 15th. What about Canberra? Came pretty close to another grand final appearance last year. They were missing Josh Hodgson for most of the season. His arrival back into the team after that ACL tear last year, is that enough to get them back to the grand final?
Yeah, I think Josh Hodgson is crucial. He was big missing piece last year. You spoke to him last week at the NRL launch. He's primed, he's ready to go. And the thing with the Raiders, I suppose, over the last decade or so, they've been able to fly under the radar a little bit. And I'd always questioned whether they'd be able to handle the pressure and expectation of being a top 4 side and vying for the title. And they've done that really well, like the way they've done over the past, since 2019. I've been really impressed. I've got them in my top 4. About you, Liam?
Yeah, I think the Raiders will probably have a similar finish to how they did last year. I think Josh Hodgson coming back is obviously a big bonus for them. Losing John Bateman is going to be a big hole to fill, and also the absences of Corey Harawira-Naera and Corey Horsbargh to start the season due to their off-field indiscretions is probably going to leave them a little bit short, but I'm looking for Hudson Young to have a big season. I've got them finishing 5th once again.
So Liam, you've got them in the 5th position. BB, you think they're going to finish in the top 4?
Top 4. Although, yeah, the 2 Corys out, maybe a bit of a slow start to the season potentially. We're not too different here. I'm willing to drop them down to 5th spot.
Compromising.
You're happy with the Raiders in 5th? So the Raiders finishing in 5th, boys. You're both agreeing on that one. What about the Bulldogs? Trent Barrett's still a pretty young coach. He's been sort of credited for what he did to the attack for Penrith last year. Is that going to be enough to turn the Bulldogs into a top 8 side, or are they still going to be towards the bottom? Liam, what do you think?
I don't think it's going to be enough to turn them into a top 8 side. I think they're probably still going to be towards the bottom part of the ladder. He will help their attack a lot. One thing you can always say about the Bulldogs is they have a crack. Their forwards are pretty solid, but they just have lacked creativity a little bit in past seasons. I don't think the signings that they've signed in the spine are going to make too much difference. Kyle Flanagan and Corey Allen, they're not match winners. They're just solid first graders. So I've got them in the bottom 4 again. I've got them finishing 13th.
Yeah, I've got the Bulldogs in the bottom 4 as well, 13th as well. I think rather than them sort of trying to push for the 8th this season, this is a bit of a rebuilding sort of a year. Josh Shadowcar going in a couple of years. I think in another 2 or 3 years, that's when they'll be looking to move up. But yeah, 13th for me as well.
So the Bulldogs in 13th. What about Cronulla? They sort of snuck into the finals, probably surprised a few people last year. Their roster hasn't changed a whole lot, but Sean Johnson out for the first half of the year is a massive blow given what he did for them last year. BB, what do you think about Cronulla's chances this year?
Yeah, Sean Johnson, a big out for the Sharks until he comes back, obviously. Be interesting to see what they do there. There's already pressure on John Morris as coach. Like you say, the roster hasn't really improved too much for this season. A couple of old bodies going around there as well. I think they'll drop out of the 8 this year.
Yeah, I've got them dropping out of the 8 as well. I think it'll be a pretty slow start for them without Sean Johnson. Matt Moylan will be wanting to have a big year. He's off contract. So I don't see them dropping down too much, but I've got them sitting just outside the 8.
Just outside the 8. What position do you guys think Cronulla realistically will make this year?
I've got the Sharks sitting at 10th on my ladder.
They got 10th as well.
Beauty.
That makes things easy. Massive hype around the Gold Coast this year after what they did towards the back end of 2020. Justin Holbrook's made a massive difference to that team in just 12 months' time. Having that 12 months with Holbrook at the helm, plus the arrival of the likes of David Fafita, Tino Fa'asuamala-Awi, and a couple of others on the side, is that enough to turn the Titans into that top 8 team that a lot of people are predicting them to be?
I'm huge. I'm big on the Titans. I'm right on the hype train, the bandwagon. Mal Meninga there, everyone says just how much of an influence he is in those signings that you mentioned as well. We've got confirmation just recently that Cam Smith is not going to be at the Titans, so they can stop thinking about it. I've got huge raps on the Titans this year, and I've got them going up to 7.
Yeah, the Titans for me, I think, are probably still a couple of years away in one key position, which is hooker, away from being a real premiership threat. Mitch Rain, Aaron Clark played quite a bit there last year. They've got young Tanner Boyd, who's more of a halfback. He's played a bit of hooker. They're really lacking in that position. But I do think the signings they've made in the forwards, as well as a handy pickup in Pat Herbert in the outside backs, is going to hold them in good stead, and they're going to have a lot of confidence from the back end of last year. So I've got them finishing 7th.
Ash Taylor had a massive year last year. We obviously know he's, once was one of the highest rated young players in the game. What if he was to go another level this year? Would that be enough to, I guess, cover for that lack of hooker position there? Do you think Ash Taylor's form could dictate whether they make the finals?
Bit of pressure on Ash Taylor this year. With the pressure that's coming around the side, it's all going to go on him. If he goes well, they'll go well. I think that they, with Jamal Fogarty coming through, another couple of guys, they've probably got the talent to be able to pick it up if Ash Taylor has another off year. But second half of last year, he really came into his own. If he can keep that sort of momentum going into 2021, there's no reason they can't be in the finals.
So Titans 8th, is that what we're agreeing?
I've got them 7th.
7th.
Yeah, we've both got them 7th.
Sneaky 7th for the Titans. Manly. So a massive out for them to start the year. Tom Trbojevic may only be for that month, but we see what happened to Manly when Tom Trbojevic isn't in that starting side. They sort of just capitulate. They've also lost Adam Fanua-Blake this year, which is a huge out. Do you think people have made enough of that loss to the team? Do you think people actually realise how big a difference he makes to the Sea Eagles?
I think that Adam Fanua-Blake is going to be a massive, massive loss for Manly. He was their best player last season. He's one of the best front rowers in the game, as we all know. Josh Aloiai is a good pickup. He's a solid first grader, but he's no Adam Fanua-Blake. I think the main issue for the Sea Eagles this season is they don't have a hooker. They had Cade Cuss play there in the trials. He looked a little bit out of his depth at hooker. We've got Lachlan Croker there as a bit of a utility. Kieran Foran's been touted as a potential option at hooker, but I think that as opposed to Tom Trbojevic, who's only going to be out for 3 or 4 weeks. I think that is the major issue. I've got them finishing 11th.
Yeah, I was at the trial. It wasn't a top Manly side that played the Tigers at Leichhardt a few weeks ago, but they were in all sorts. Nothing on attack, nothing on defence. I've got them in 11th as well.
So Seagulls to finish 11th. What about Melbourne Storm? It goes without saying what they've got on their plate at the moment with Harry Grant coming to the club replacing Cam Smith. Obviously, no one can replace Cam Smith, but if you've got to pick anyone in the NRL, it's probably Harry Grant to give it a crack. Is this going to be the year that the Storm miss the 8 or not?
I've said it a couple of times over the past 15 years that the Storm can't keep it, and I'm dropping the Storm out of my 8. But Harry Grant, probably the biggest rising star in the NRL. Had a sensational season last year, broke through into Queensland. Was he injured for the first couple of rounds, but I don't think that'll trip him up too much, the Storm. And I've after doubting them so many times over the past decade, I'm not doing it this year. I've got them well at the top of the ladder.
Yeah, you can't doubt Craig Bellamy in the Storm, and it could be potentially his last year at the club as well. He's been touted as moving to Cronulla potentially the next season as a coaching director. I think their roster is still very, very strong. It's among the best in the league. Harry Grant, Brandon Smith potentially sharing that hooking role is an exciting prospect. And they've picked up Remus Smith to cover for Suliasi Vunivalu, who's of course gone to rugby union. He's been a shining light for the Bulldogs in some tough seasons. So he's a really handy pickup. I just like the look of their roster, and I've actually got them finishing as the minor premiers.
So Storm in first for Liam. BB, how do you feel?
I got them in second.
I'm willing to compromise there and chuck them at second.
All right. the Cam Smith out, that's the difference between 1 and 2.
Fair enough. I'm happy to go with second there.
Second for the Storm.
Old rubber arm, I've been twisting it easily.
Big calls here. Cool. Newcastle. Couple of things missing for the Knights last year. We saw them sort of drift off as the year went on, but a really hot start. They have Tyson Frizzell arriving to the club, a couple other signings along the side. Is a player like Tyson Frizzell, we know how good he can be. He was for the Dragons and at rep level. Is he enough to turn the Knights into a top 4 team, or do you guys see them potentially missing the 8 altogether?
Well, I've got them missing the 8 actually in Newcastle. I think they were just far too inconsistent last season to be a real premiership threat, and this season the big factor for me is that there's clubs on the rise like the Titans and maybe some others we might touch on in a second. Tyson Frizzell is obviously a good pickup. He's a quality player, has been for a long time. But I just have some doubts over their consistency. I think their depth will be tested a little bit this year. They copped some injuries in the forwards. I just don't think they have the depth to be a top 8 side if that happens. And of course, Callum Ponga out for the first 3-4 weeks of the season at least. So that's going to hurt them a little bit, I think, and they'll be off to a slow start.
Probably one of the most frustrating sides to watch or tip last year. The Knights just inconsistent, don't know what they're going to throw up. They had a few injuries, Connor Watson as well last year. But yeah, Frizzell is a huge in, but I just don't see where they've sort of made up any ground to cover for any of the things that they lacked last year. And yeah, I've got them slipping out of the 8 in 2021 as well.
A couple of off-field incidents, mostly involving Mitch Pearce as well. Do you think that's going to really derail their campaign?
Well, it can't help, can it? When your off season is overshadowed or clouded by off-field incidents like that. Not that he doesn't have form in that area or experience, but it's a bit harsh on Mitchell Pearce. But it can't help, and I just don't see. Like you say, with other sides rising and strengthening their roster, I don't see how this Knights side is going to stack up to some of these other sides.
The leadership is another big thing for me. The Knights they've named Jaden Brayley as their co-captain, which is interesting considering he's only played about half a game for the club and he's probably played less than 50 NRL games during his time at Cronulla. He's only 23, 24. He's a young leader. He hasn't played much first grade. They've obviously got Daniel Saifidi there as well. It'll be interesting to see who's really going to step up and be a leader for the Knights this season.
Yeah, not big on leadership groups, eh?
No,
pick a captain.
Just pick one and stick with it.
So, boys, where are we settling on the Knights in terms of their position this year? 12th?
9th?
I've got them at 9th.
My apologies. So the 9th place Knights. The Warriors, BB, your boys.
My Warriors.
Your Warriors. A couple of massive off-season movements. Obviously, Nathan Brown's arrival is pretty key. Doesn't have a great record of turning teams into finals teams, but he's definitely shown his ability to develop rosters, and that's sort of what the Warriors have really been lacking, you would say. Is his arrival plus, Fanua Blake, Kane Evans, Ewan Aitken, all those arrivals, is that enough for them to finally find the finals?
Yeah, I think, although Nathan Brown hasn't really been able to kick on, like with the Knights we saw what happened there, but what he's been able to do is almost turn teams around, build a roster really well. Focus on sort of the things that need fixing, and turn teams into potential finals footy sides. I think that's what we've got this year. Like you say, Adam Fanua Blake is a massive signing for the Warriors. I think over the last 20, 25 years, it's probably been one of the downfalls. The Warriors have had awesome wingers, skillful halves, big centres, but through the middle they lack a bit of firepower at times. So Adam Fanua Blake, Ben Murdoch-Masila off the bench. He's been out of the NRL for a little while, but just so much experience and talent from him. And Ewan Aitken, he's probably the other one. A little bit flown under the radar with some of the big boppers the Warriors have got, but I've got the Warriors jumping into my top 8.
Yeah, I've got the Warriors returning to finals footy this year as well. I really like the way they've recruited in the past 12, 18 months. Adam Fanua Blake is obviously the big one. Bailey Sirinen is a fantastic signing. He'll add a little bit of a point of difference to them in the back row. I thought he was brilliant for South last year. He really stepped up when they were lacking a little bit in that position. And Ewan Aitken as well on the edge is just something different for the Warriors. They haven't really had someone like that. So I've got them jumping back into the 8. I don't see them as a premiership contender under Nathan Brown just yet, but I think that they're going to be a team on the rise and they're going to be really hard to beat. So I've got them finishing in 8th spot.
You'd be pretty stoked with that, BB. How do you feel about them finishing in the 8?
Yeah, I've got them sneaking into 8th spot. I think probably if there is a question mark, it'd be at hooker. Wade Egan's back for round 1, overcoming an elbow complaint, but that's probably the one weak spot. Everywhere else, super strong and a bit of depth as well. So 8th spot.
Cool. You guys agree too much.
I think the thing that'll go understated a little bit is it's Roger Tuivasa-Sheck's last season as well for the Warriors. They're going to want to play for him. He's their captain.
I'm trying not to think about that. Okay.
Yeah, sorry to rub it in, but obviously he's one of the best players in the game, and he's going to want to go out on a high note.
So Warriors in 8th. What about the Cowboys? Another team with a lot of off-season changes. Todd Payton arrives as coach. Not too much change as far as roster goes, but Michael Morgan, who missed a lot of last year, he'll be back and fully fit for the year. Will that make the difference for the Cowboys? Are they going to return to the finals, or we still see them missing out?
No, I don't see them making the finals. I just don't think they have enough depth. They don't have enough quality, even in their best 17 alone, let alone their top 30, to be a final side, I don't think. They're very top-heavy on their roster. They have been for quite a few years now. I do see them improving under Todd Payton. He's proven that he's going to be a real quality coach in the NRL, and over time, that's going to be really beneficial for the Cowboys. If they can keep Valentine Holmes, Jason Taumalolo, Michael Morgan, Josh Maguire on the field for the majority of the season, they'll move up the ladder. But I can't see them returning to the finals now.
BB, what do you reckon?
Yeah, like you say, if those big 4 guys are on the field, the Cowboys are dangerous. But I just think they're probably lacking elsewhere in that starting 17. I got massive raps on Todd Payton when he took over the Warriors last year. He was on a hiding to nothing, and he sort of changed the vibe at the side. Even though when the Warriors sacked Steve Kearney, I was pretty filthy on it. But what he was able to do in the back end of last season, I was pretty impressed with. So I think the Cowboys, there's a lot to like about the Cowboys, but I still have them missing out this season.
We've got 12th, 14th and 16th still available outside of the top 8. Where are the Cowboys falling into that?
I had them finishing 12th. I don't know about you.
Yeah, I got 14th. It's tough down the bottom sort of half.
Yeah, it is. It is tricky. I don't know. I'll leave the final
got left on the
Cowboys worse than the Bulldogs this year?
Oh, true.
I don't think so.
Go 12. Yeah, go
I think
12.
they've got a lot more quality in their roster than the Bulldogs. So I think 12th. 12th's fair.
How about the Eels, boys? We know how much potential the Eels roster has, arguably one of the best in the NRL, but is Brad Arthur the coach to turn them into a premiership team?
Yeah, good roster, but just haven't converted that into genuine finals or top of the table contenders. And I don't really see what's changed over this off-season. I don't see them bringing in any strike power or bringing through any young guys that are going to really make a change. They've been there or thereabouts, but I think over the last couple of years, apart from maybe a month here or there, they haven't been really a team that you've going to keep my eye on, because these top 2 or these, the Eels are going to make it a run to the grand final. And I actually thought about dropping the Eels maybe outside of the 8th, maybe into 9th. I've got them top 8, but I think the window is closing for the Eels.
Yeah, I think last year was the year for Parramatta. I tipped them to win the premiership last year. I thought with their roster, some teams, probably going the opposite way. But now the Eels, I think, after last season, the way they fell off a little bit through that middle and towards the end of the season, they're not going to be as sky high confidence-wise as they were probably going into last season. I think it's a big year for Mitchell Moses. Pretty much every year is a big year for Mitchell Moses. He comes under a lot of scrutiny. He's obviously one of the best halfbacks in the game on his day, but he needs to produce a lot more consistency. And I think that the loss of Michael Jennings is going to be a tough one for the Eels to fill. He was returning to some really strong form, and he's going to be a big loss for them. So I've got the Eels finishing in 6th spot. BB?
Yeah, I wanted to go low as 7th or 8th. I'm happy to go with you on 6th, but just not confident at all on the Eels.
So I think we'll settle on 6 for Parramatta, by the sounds. Sorry, Titans. Penrith, so much intrigue about Penrith this year. They did what not many people were tipping them to do last year and made the grand final with that massive win streak. it would be pretty hard for them to emulate that again this year. But do you think what they've got on that roster is still good enough for them to be a top 4 team?
Absolutely. What the talent they've got and the potential that they've been able to convert into on-field results is there for all to see. What I think will be the big difference this year is how they go with being a marked side. They were able to fly under the radar. They were, underdogs for a lot of last seasons, even on that incredible winning run that they went on. So that's going to be really interesting to see how that pans out. I do have them top 4, but yeah, it's just going to be interesting to see how they go with the pressure on.
Yeah, I agree exactly with what BB said. They're going to have a lot more attention on them this season as opposed to what they did last year because no one was really expecting too much from them. Guys like Jerome Luai, Stephen Crichton obviously had breakout seasons. They're going to have a lot more attention from opposition defences on them. I think the other big factor is the loss of James Tamau and Zane Tedavano. I think they were 2 really experienced guys in their forward pack. And that's going to mean that guys like James Fisher-Harris, Moses Leota are going to have to step up. And it'll be an opportunity for some young guys. We've seen Penrith love to blood young players. So I've still got them in my top 4, but I think they're going to drop off a little bit on their performances last season.
He's pretty used to being the Panthers' go-to man already, but how do you think the captaincy will affect Nathan Cleary's game this year, BB?
I think he'll grow into it. I think it's a great move. You've seen him rise to these kind of challenges when the pressure goes on. He put in a pretty good shift in the grand final last year, and he steps up for New South Wales as well. Well, not quite last year, but I think it'll suit him well.
How do we feel about Penrith? Obviously, they're going to finish in the top 4 by the looks of our ladder here. But where in the top 4 are we settling?
I've got them sitting 4th. What about you?
I've got 3.
We've got some big clubs to come.
Some big Broncos.
We've got the Roosters and Rabbitohs to come.
And the Dragons come.
And the
too.
Dragons, of course, to come. Yeah.
Look out, top 4.
Okay.
I think settle with 4th for Penrith.
Settle on
Go for
4th for Penrith. Now,
we're going to have a big battle for top spot here, aren't we?
I know.
Yep.
Speaking of the Red V, Liam, your team, a faithful Dragons fan, and I think I know where you're going to say they're going to finish, but another club with plenty of change over the summer. Anthony Griffin comes in. He's obviously got an excellent finals record as a coach, but the question remains around, whether the senior players of the Dragons can take them back to the finals. Ben Hunt back in the captaincy. Corey Norman didn't have his best year last year. Even players like Tarek Sims and Paul Vaughan also struggled. Is their form going to improve, and can Anthony Griffin take them back to the finals? Or
I'm going to hand to Liam here as the Dragons fan. I feel like he's got some things he wants to get off his chest here.
It is going to be a very, very long year for the Red V, unfortunately. I just think their recruitment and retention over the past, not just the last 12 months, but probably the last 2 or 3 years has been pretty average. They haven't signed too much quality to replace the big names they've lost, especially in the forwards. Jack de Bellin's obviously one that could potentially come back in pending the outcome of his trial. But they've lost Tyson Brazell, they've lost James Graham, who was towards the back end of his career, but he's still an experienced player. Corbin Sims gone as well. Jacob Host, who's now a starting player for South Sydney. They've lost a lot of players in the forwards, haven't really replaced it with much quality. The outside backs, I think the back 5 is a real positive for the Dragons, but I just don't think the forwards are going to be able to lay a platform for them to really create anything this season. Unfortunately for the Dragons, I've got them finishing with a wooden spoon.
I agree. Sorry, St George Illawarra fans. I've got Dragons in 16th. Just don't know what they're doing with the recruitment. What's going on there? Saw the story, the double whammy with the Folau potential signing and the McInnes news. That kind of sums up the Dragons for me. And yeah, again, not 100% sold on Anthony Griffin as an NRL coach, especially not with a struggling side like this. So yeah, 16th.
too easy? Well, both of you boys reckon they're going to have a worse season than Brisbane's. That makes things easier. The Rabbitohs, everyone's talking about the Rabbitohs this pre-season. A couple of really big talking points, one being Wayne Bennett's last year at Redfern. We all know what sort of premiership record he has, but players just love to play for him, and I'm sure they'd love to send Wayne Bennett out a premiership winner. Liam, what do you think?
I think much like last year, I thought Parramatta's year was going to be 2020. South Sydney's year is 2021. The signings that they've made, Latrell Mitchell back from injury, Wayne Bennett's last season. There's so many factors, everything is lining up. All of their key players in the spine, they're in the sweet spot of their careers. This is a premiership year for South Sydney. Anything less than the top 4 finish in the regular season is a failure, and they really should be pushing for a premiership at the end of this season. I had them finishing the end of the regular season in third. BB, what say you?
Yeah, I'm shooting right for the top with the Rabbitohs. I had them in top spot. Latrell Mitchell back is huge. I think Cody Walker's in career best form, and I think the back end of his Cody Walker season last year was a little bit underrated. I thought he was absolutely sensational. Benji Marshall into that 17. It'd be interesting to see how Wayne Bennett uses him, but I think that's just massive. And I can also see over the next couple of weeks, an announcement being made on Adam Reynolds' future. Maybe he gets a 1 year or whatever extension it is. That's going to be a huge boost for the Rabbitohs. And yeah, like you say, anything outside the top 4 is a failure, and they should be making, a grand final, if not a premiership.
What have the Rabbitohs missed over the last 3 years that What have the Rabbitohs missed over the last 3 years that hasn't allowed them to go that one step further to a premiership, and why do they have that this year?
I think depth in the forwards. They showed last year that they were starting to build around some younger players. Keon Koloamatangi obviously had a big year. Hame Sele. Patrick Mago missed a lot of the season with injury, but he's back. He's fit and firing this year. They've got a lot more depth, I feel, in the forwards than they had maybe 2-3 years ago. And Jai Arrow is obviously a fantastic signing. He's going to come off the bench to start the season, which is interesting. But I think that the depth in the forwards is certainly what is going to set them apart as opposed to previous seasons.
Yeah, it just looked like they ran a little ragged towards the end of the finals last year. Remember that the game they got knocked out against the Panthers? It was pretty scrappy, a bit of an ugly watch. So yeah, depth I think is a massive answer to that one.
So you guys are shaking on the Rabbitohs coming first?
Can I twist your arm?
Yeah, well, I've got them lifting the trophy at the end of the year, so I'm happy to go with them first.
We'll back Liam's call. The arch rivals, the Roosters, a team that I guess you could say potentially underachieved last year. A lot of people thought they'd do a little bit better than they did. Still went very close to another grand final. Not a lot's changed roster-wise. They've still got pretty much the exact same team on the park. That continuity will definitely help the Roosters' chances this year.
Where did you have the Roosters? Because we got third spot left, and I had the Roosters down in fifth. So it's a little higher than I wanted to put the Roosters. But like you say, consistency is the key. It's almost like after going so well in 2018-19, it's almost like the sort of bad season. Not that it was a bad season, but the loss they kind of had to have. So I've got Roosters fifth, but we're going to have to put them in third.
I had East finishing second to finish the season. I think that they're going to, probably be a little bit fitter this year, a little bit fresher. Obviously, Boyd Cordner is a loss, but Satili Tupanua had a breakout season in 2020. I think Lockie Lamb in the halves is an upgrade on what they had there last year. So I think that they're actually coming into this season quite underrated. Not many people are talking about the Roosters, and if you look across their best 17, it's the best 17 in the comp by a pretty considerable margin, in my opinion. So I had them finishing second. We've got third left open, so looks like they're taking third.
They can't come 14th. So.
Which leaves 14th position for the West Tigers. The West Tigers of perennial underachievers, pretty much love 9th position every year. They're not even going to come 9th according to you guys this year. What's wrong with the Tigers going into the new season? Why are they going to come 14th, BB?
See, I had the Tigers in 12th, but like we were saying with the Cowboys and Bulldogs, it's kind of tough to figure out those bottom sort of 5 or 6 spaces. So we'll have to go 14th for the Tigers. I don't think they've lost Josh Aloiai, who was pretty massive for them last year. And I don't think they've sort of built up the way that they probably would have wanted to. And again, like we say, Michael Maguire under a bit of pressure. He felt it last year. I don't know whether he handled it all that well at times. So it'll be interesting to see what happens, but definitely not top 8.
I think the big issue for the Tigers is their spine. I think they've signed well in the forwards. Luciano Leilua had a breakout season last year. Luke Garner's a real solid player. Offengawi, Tamau, great pickups in the front row. But I think the major issue is their spine. Dane Laurie has played 2 games of first grade. Luke Brooks is under immense pressure. Adam Dewey has played every position under the sun since he came to first grade. We'll finally get a crack at number 6. Jacob Little's battled injuries for 2-3 seasons now. I just don't think they have experience or quality in their spine, and that's what's really going to hurt them, I think. So yeah, I've got them finishing in the bottom 4.
Plenty of youth in that roster, but James Tarmow comes in the team. We saw what he did with Penrith. Looks like you guys aren't predicting them to have a similar rise to Penrith last year, but do you think that'll provide any sort of difference? Do you think the Tigers could be pushing for the finals with James Tarmow? You know, his leadership and what he brings to the team as far as experience.
I think his leadership and his experience is massive for them, but I don't think it's going to be a game changer in terms of winning games. I think they lack strike power. Dane Laurie, hugely impressive, huge potential, but is still untested. So I don't think even with Tamo, I don't think they'll be going up.
So 14th for the Tigers. Sorry, Tigers fans, you're not even coming 9th this year. So that wraps up our top 8 predictions for the 2021 season. Thank you very much, Liam and Brendan, for providing your thoughts. A couple of massive calls. Let us know what you guys think. If you see any big movements from last year's top 8, it'd be great to hear from you.